Hi, fifth graders. Today we're going to talk about a special type of polygon called the quadrilateral. And you probably remember that quadrilaterals are four-sided shapes. Now, just like we talked about triangles having different names based on their sides and their angles, we also are going to learn this year in fifth grade that quadrilaterals can fall into more than one category based on their sides and angles. And I like to think about this kind of like a club. So if you're a Boy Scout or a Girl Scout or belong to any club really, you know that there are certain rules that you have to follow in order to get into that club. Well, we can think about quadrilaterals the same way. Some of the clubs are going to have more rules, which means that the shape has to meet more characteristics in order to be called a certain name. Other clubs have fewer rules, so a shape has to have fewer characteristics in order to be called by that name. So let's take a look at the names and the ways that we can describe quadrilaterals. So the first rule that any four-sided shape has to have is that it must have four sides and four angles. In order to be called a quadrilateral, these two things need to be true. But there are also more specific types of quadrilaterals that follow different rules. The next most specific type is the parallelogram, which we'll talk about in a second, and the trapezoid. Now, this is an example of one type of trapezoid, but a trapezoid has four sides and four angles. But the unique thing about this shape is that only one set of its sides has to be parallel. So in this particular trapezoid, the top and the bottom sides are parallel lines, but the sides on the left and the right are not. So that's why we can call a trapezoid a quadrilateral, but we're going to find that we can't call it the next most exclusive club, which is a parallelogram. A parallelogram is a quadrilateral. That means it follows those same rules. It has four sides and four angles, but it also has one new rule. And that new rule is that a parallelogram must have two pairs of parallel sides. So in this parallelogram, the top and the bottom sides are one set of parallel lines, and the left and the right sides are a second set of parallel lines. Now, within the parallelogram club, we have three other categories: the rectangle, the rhombus, and the square. And just like triangles had different rules based on their sides or their angles, so do quadrilaterals. So let's take a look at the rhombus first. The rhombus has rules about the length of each side. So a rhombus follows all the same rules as a quadrilateral, four sides and four angles, and a parallelogram, two pairs of parallel sides, but there's also a new rule about the length of each side. In order to be called a rhombus, a shape must have four equal sides or four congruent sides. So that means all four of my sides would measure the exact same length. Now, a rectangle has a rule about the angles. So rectangles follow the quadrilateral rules, four sides and four angles. It follows the parallelogram rule that there are two pairs of parallel sides, but a rectangle also has a new rule that each of the four angles must be right angles. So if I have to call a shape a rectangle, that means all four of my angles would be 90 degrees or right angles. Last but not least, I have the most exclusive club, which is the square. Now, a square is unique because it has all of the rules of the rhombus, the rectangle, the parallelogram, and the quadrilateral. So if you look at the bottom, it reminds us that squares belong to all four clubs because they have two pairs of parallel sides, they have four equal sides or four congruent sides, and they have four right angles. So when you're naming quadrilaterals, you have to be really careful to look at their sides and their angles to make sure that you've given them all the names that they can have. Thanks for watching, and use this to help you as you complete your practice.